I'll never forget the moment I walked into that reception hall. Laughter echoed, music played, but the bride was nowhere to be found. Whispers filled the room. Her perfect day had been burned to the ground by the one person she never expected. And when I found out who had done it and why, I realized this wasn't just a ruined wedding. This was revenge that had been simmering for nearly a decade, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Before I dive in, if you love hearing real stories where karma finally shows up, sometimes dressed as sweet, calculated revenge, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because trust me, this story will have you glued from beginning to end. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name, where Saturday mornings are for yard sales, and where the gossip travels faster than the church bells ring. My family lived in a quiet neighborhood, and right next door were some of the best neighbors I could have asked for. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, about 2 years younger than me. From the outside, they looked like the picture-perfect siblings. But if you spent even 5 minutes around them, you'd realize something. Those 2 lived for pranks. I'm not talking about cute little hide-the-remote kind of pranks. No. Their game was about one-upping each other, constantly trying to outdo the last trick. At first, it was innocent enough. Salt instead of sugar in the cereal bowl, plastic wrap over the toilet seat. A frog slipped into a backpack before school. They'd laugh, their parents would scold them lightly, and then the cycle would repeat. But over the years, as they got older, those pranks started to cut deeper. What began as playful teasing slowly morphed into something that bordered on cruel. The sister, in particular. She had a sharp streak. You could see it in the way she smirked after pulling something off. She loved attention. Loved getting that laugh at her brother's expense. And while he was good-natured, there was always this shadow in his eyes after one of her stunts. Like he wanted to shrug it off, but inside, it stung. Now, I got close with their family, especially the dad and the son. The boy would come over, mow my lawn, help with odd jobs, save up a little spending money. He was polite, hardworking, the kind of kid who deserved a break. Over the years, I saw him grow, saw him try to laugh off the constant pranks, saw him carry himself with a quiet dignity, even when he was humiliated. And then came prom night. If you've ever lived in a small town, you know prom isn't just another dance. It's an event. Parents rent limos, kids spend weeks picking out dresses and tuxedos. For some, it's the highlight of their entire high school life. And for him, he was excited. He'd been working out, growing his hair, saving money for a nice suit. He looked sharp enough that even his usually mocking sister admitted, "You actually clean up well." What he didn't know was that she had something planned, something far beyond harmless fun. The morning of prom, he hopped into the shower like any normal day, lathered up his hair with shampoo, rinsed, and thought nothing of it. But as he dried off, he noticed clumps of hair sticking to the towel. At first he thought maybe he was imagining it. Stress, maybe. But then more hair came loose, sliding down his shoulders, gathering in the sink like fallen leaves. Panic set in. His hair, his carefully styled, weeks-prepped prom hair, was falling out in chunks. His scalp tingled with that burning sensation you get from chemical irritation, and as he ran his hands through what was left, he realized the damage was done. His sister had replaced his shampoo with hair removal cream. By the time he arrived at prom, he was completely bald. No stylish haircut, no slicked-back look, just bare skin shining under the gymnasium lights. His friends tried to laugh it off with him, but you could see the humiliation in his eyes. Photos from that night weren't about his tux, or his date, or his smile. They were about the prank, about her. That night, something inside him hardened. I moved away a few months later, so I wasn't around to see the fallout. But through emails and texts, I kept in touch with him. He graduated, went to college, got himself a good job, and eventually settled not far from his parents. On the outside, he seemed fine. But whenever the topic of high school came up, there was always that pause, that little hesitation, like he was remembering a wound that hadn't quite healed. He never forgot what she did, and as I would later find out, he never forgave her either. When I left that small town, life pulled me in different directions. New job, new city, new responsibilities. But every so often I'd check in with him. A quick text around the holidays, a congrats when he graduated, the occasional call to see how his parents were doing. And through those conversations, I pieced together something that stuck with me. That prank on prom night had left a scar deeper than most people realized. Sure, on the surface he carried on like nothing happened. He shaved his head, wore it with reluctant pride, even joked about joining the bald club early. But when you knew him, when you listened between the lines, you could hear it. The bitterness, the unresolved sting. He'd say things like, "Yeah, my sister's still the same. Always the life of the party, always making fun of people. Never gets called out, though." Or, "Funny thing, even my prom date joked that at least she wouldn't have to mess up her hair dancing. Can't say I blame her, but it sucked." He didn't dwell, but the undertone was always there. What struck me most was how the whole family handled it. His parents brushed it off back then. To them, it was kids being kids. They scolded her, sure, but they didn't truly understand the damage. That's the thing with siblings. Outsiders will often laugh it off. Oh, that's just how they are. But sometimes those so-called pranks carry consequences that ripple for years. And for him, prom night wasn't just embarrassing. It robbed him of a milestone. Those photos, those memories, forever tainted by something cruel. As time passed, his sister thrived. From what I heard, she went to college too, got engaged, and began planning what sounded like the event of the decade, her wedding. Now, if prom is big in a small town, a wedding is monumental. It's not just about two people. It's about two families, about pride, about status. People gossip about the flowers, the dress, the cake, the number of guests. For months leading up to it, everyone knew. Her wedding was going to be huge, and for her, it was the spotlight she had always craved. Meanwhile, her brother worked steadily, built a good career, kept mostly to himself. He was quieter than she was, but I could tell he hadn't forgotten. Every once in a while in our messages he'd drop a hint, a half joke, half confession. Like once, years after prom, I mentioned a prank war between coworkers. He replied, "Better be careful with those. If they take it too far, you never forget. Trust me." Or another time, when I congratulated him on his job promotion, he quipped, "Funny, I've been waiting a long time for something else to fall into place too." At the time, I brushed it off. I figured he just meant life goals, the kind of vague things people say when they're ambitious. But looking back now, those words had weight. The closer the wedding got, the more the town buzzed. Even though I'd moved away, I still had ties there, and I started hearing the details. The venue was massive. The guest list? Practically everyone in town, plus relatives from out of state. Her parents were footing a big part of the bill, along with the groom's family. She was walking into that day like a queen, with everyone there to bow to her perfect life. But beneath that picture-perfect surface, something was brewing. Her brother never said it outright, but I sensed it. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment, waiting for the perfect stage. And what better stage than her wedding day? Before we get to that moment, though, I need to paint a clearer picture of their relationship leading up to it. Because this wasn't just about one prank at prom. That was the breaking point, sure. But the years that followed only poured salt into the wound. She never stopped reminding him. Family dinners? She'd laugh. "Remember when you went to prom looking like Mr. Clean?" Holiday gatherings? She'd nudge her cousins. "You should have seen him. He looked like a thumb in a tux." Every joke was a knife twist. He'd chuckle, act like it didn't matter. But deep down I could tell it mattered. It always mattered. He told me once, "It's like she doesn't even realize how cruel it was." Or maybe she does, and that's the worst part. She knows, and she just doesn't care. Fast forward to the weekend of the wedding. My wife and I got the invite. It was addressed from the bride, not the groom, which told you everything about who was running the show. We thought, why not? It would be a nice excuse to visit home, see old friends, and have a night out without the kids. My brother agreed to take the kids up to the lake cabin, so my wife and I had a free pass for 2 days. I'll admit I was curious. I wanted to see how she'd turned out, what kind of woman she had become after years of being the center of attention. And of course I wanted to catch up with her brother. We arrived in town the day before the wedding. The energy was electric. Every coffee shop, every diner, every corner store, people were talking about it. You couldn't escape the buzz. But the morning of the wedding, that's when everything shifted. We woke up to a text message from their dad. Short and blunt. Wedding canceled. Reception still on. Come to the party. I read it 3 times, sure I'd misunderstood. Canceled? On the day of? But the reception was still happening? My wife and I looked at each other, confused but intrigued. Whatever had gone down, it had to be huge. The atmosphere inside that reception hall was unlike anything I'd ever felt at a wedding. Or whatever this event had become now that it wasn't technically a wedding anymore. People stood around clutching their drinks, speaking in low voices, trying to piece together what had happened. The band still played softly in the background, but there was no bride, no groom, no ceremony. Just confusion, laughter in the wrong places, and a strange energy that buzzed like static electricity. And then I saw him, her brother. He wasn't dressed in a tux, no boutonniere, no polished shoes, just a neat shirt, rolled sleeves, casual but confident. He was leaning against the bar, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his lips, watching the room like a man who had finally set down a heavy weight he'd been carrying for years. I made my way over. "So what happened?" I asked, keeping my voice low. He smirked, eyes glinting with something both mischievous and cold. 9 years, he said. I waited 9 years for this. That's when it hit me. He'd done something. He wasn't just a bystander to whatever chaos had unfolded. He was the architect. Later that night, once the drinks loosened people's tongues and the laughter started to bubble, the story came out. Piece by piece, whispered from one guest to another, until it spread like wildfire, and by the time it reached me, it had the weight of a legend. The bride, his sister, had woken up that morning expecting to live the dream. Dress, hair, makeup, the whole fairy tale package. She'd spent months planning every detail, controlling every vendor, ensuring she'd be the star of the day. But when she stepped into the shower, lathered up her hair and rinsed, something went horribly wrong. Clumps of hair began sliding down her shoulders, sticking to her hands, clogging the drain. The same horror her brother had faced 9 years earlier was now hers. Except this wasn't prom night. This was her wedding day. Her screams had apparently echoed through the house. Guests heard about the chaos secondhand, her refusing to come out of the bathroom, stylists scrambling to salvage what they could, her makeup artist walking out in frustration when she realized the bride wouldn't even sit in the chair. By noon, it was clear the ceremony wasn't happening. The groom's family was furious, the bride's parents were devastated, and the bride herself? She locked herself in her room and refused to be seen. The official word was, wedding canceled. But really, it was more like a wedding destroyed. Now, here's the part that fascinated me. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment retaliation. This was precision, patience. A plan that had been growing, silently, for nearly a decade. After the reception, I managed to corner him again. "So you really did it?" I asked. He didn't deny it. Didn't even hesitate. I told myself the day would come. I just had to wait for the right moment. And this was it. I asked him why now? Why not sooner? He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. Because prom was supposed to be my milestone. She stole that from me. I figured, what's her milestone? What's the one day she'd care about more than anything? The one day she couldn't afford for things to go wrong? Her wedding. And I wasn't about to rush it. Revenge, you don't serve it hot. You let it get cold. Ice cold. Chills ran down my spine. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't laughing. He was calm, almost serene. Like a man who had carried a burden and finally set it down. The planning, he admitted, had been years in the making, though not in the way most people might imagine. He didn't sit around plotting every detail daily. Instead, it was like a file in the back of his mind, a quiet whisper that one day, when the stars aligned, he'd know exactly what to do. When his sister got engaged, the whisper grew louder. He kept his distance, played the supportive brother, offered help when asked, and slowly he observed where she kept her toiletries, which bathroom she used, how paranoid, or not, she was about her belongings. She never suspected a thing, he said, almost shaking his head at the irony. She thought I'd let it go. that I'd moved on. But every time she cracked a joke about prom, it was like fuel. She had no idea she was writing her own ending. The night before the wedding, he slipped into the bathroom she'd be using that morning. The bottles lined neatly on the counter. Shampoo, conditioner, hairspray, mousse. He replaced just one. Her shampoo. Same bottle, same cap. Just a different liquid inside. And then he walked away. No nerves, no second thoughts. Just patience. Because he knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she would step into that shower in the morning, lather up, and seal her fate. When I asked him if he worried about going too far, he shrugged. She did it to me first. All I did was give her back what she gave me. Same trick, same cruelty, just on a day that mattered to her as much as prom mattered to me. And honestly, it was hard to argue with that. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about the act. It's about the build-up, the anticipation, the psychology. Imagine carrying that kind of weight for 9 years. Every family holiday, every birthday, every time your sister mocked you about the one night you wanted to shine. Imagine holding your tongue, playing the long game, waiting for the day you'd flip the script. The restraint alone was staggering. Most people would have lashed out within weeks or months, but he waited until the stage was perfect, until the humiliation would be as deep, as lasting, as unforgettable as what he endured. And that's what made it so chilling. Because when you looked around that reception, when you saw the guests laughing awkwardly, the groom's parents shaking their heads, the bride's absence like a gaping hole in the night, you realized something. He hadn't just ruined her day. He'd etched himself into the story of her life. For the rest of time, whenever someone mentioned her wedding, this would be the memory. Not the flowers, not the vows, not the dance, just the humiliation, just the revenge. The longer the night went on, the clearer it became that this wasn't just gossip anymore. This was history being written in real time. Everyone in that reception hall knew they were witnessing something that would be talked about in this town for decades, and at the center of it all was the glaring absence of the bride. Normally, a bride's absence at a wedding would mean panic. But here, it meant something different. It meant victory, for him. The DJ tried to keep the energy alive, spinning upbeat songs, coaxing people onto the dance floor. And slowly they went. People danced, drank, laughed, even toasted, like the wedding wasn't missing at all. Except it was. Everyone felt it. Every empty glance toward the door, every whispered, "Is she really not coming?" carried the same weight. She'd been taken down. Around mid-evening, I stepped outside with him for some fresh air. The summer night was thick with heat. Cicadas buzzing in the trees. He lit a cigarette, something I hadn't known he'd picked up over the years, and took a long drag. "You know," I said carefully, "most people wouldn't have had the patience." He smirked. "Most people don't understand what it's like to be humiliated like that. To have your one night stolen from you. I wasn't going to waste my revenge on something small. I wanted her to feel it, to really feel it." He flicked ash onto the pavement, eyes narrowing. The look on her face when she realized, "I'll carry that with me forever. That's all I needed." I asked him what she'd done when she found out. He chuckled darkly. Screamed, cried, threw things. Told everyone she wasn't leaving her room. Said the wedding was off, that she wouldn't let anyone see her like that. Bride without her crown? Nah, not happening. The calmness in his voice was eerie. He wasn't boasting, but he wasn't apologizing either. He was settled. Content. Like a man who had finally closed a chapter that had haunted him for years. Inside, whispers swirled like smoke. Some guests called it cruel, unforgivable. Others said it was poetic justice. And as the drinks flowed, the opinions got bolder. I overheard one older aunt mutter, "Serves her right. She's been nasty since she was a kid." Another guest shook his head. "No wedding? What a waste of money." But honestly, I can't stop laughing. The groom's parents looked livid, the father pacing, the mother whispering furiously into her phone. The groom himself? He was a ghost. Word spread quickly that he'd stormed out after the cancellation, humiliated and furious. Nobody could blame him. His bride had chosen pride over problem-solving. She could have walked down that aisle with a wig, a scarf, even bald if she owned it. But instead, she let the humiliation consume her, And in that choice, her brother's revenge wasn't just effective, it was absolute. Her parents tried to save face. They made speeches, thanking everyone for coming, encouraging people to enjoy the food and drinks, but their eyes betrayed them. Anger, disappointment, sadness all rolled together. At one point, I caught her father speaking quietly to his son, the Avenger. He didn't yell. He didn't cause a scene. He just said, "What you did tonight, it wasn't right. But I get it. She hurt you once and we never really dealt with it. I guess this is how you decided to deal with it yourself." The son nodded, said nothing more, and sipped his drink. That silence spoke volumes. The party went on into the night, and honestly, people had fun. Without the ceremony, without the stiff traditions, it turned into a free-for-all celebration. Good food, music, dancing, laughter. The bride's absence became less of a tragedy and more of a joke. By the end of the night, guests were taking bets on when she'd come out, or if the engagement was even still intact. But she never appeared. Not once. Her wedding day, the day she'd planned, dreamed of, built up in her mind for years, was reduced to nothing more than a punchline. And her brother? He was the quiet shadow at the center of it. The one man who finally tipped the scales of justice. When my wife and I finally headed home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About him, about the way revenge had settled into his bones like a second heartbeat. And you know what? I couldn't even blame him. Because here's the truth. Revenge stories aren't just about cruelty. They're about balance, about righting a wrong that the world refused to acknowledge. His sister humiliated him at his milestone. She laughed at him, mocked him, carried that joke for years. Nobody stepped in to stop her. Nobody held her accountable, so he did, and he did it in the coldest, most poetic way possible. The fallout? Oh, it was messy. The groom called off the engagement entirely within a week, said he couldn't marry someone who cared more about appearances than commitment. That she'd rather cancel a wedding than face imperfection. The small town, of course, had a field day with that gossip. Her parents? Furious, embarrassed. But deep down, I think they knew they'd allowed her cruelty to fester unchecked for years. They'd brushed it off, laughed it away, let her run wild. And now they paid the price alongside her. As for her brother, he walked away lighter. Happier even. He didn't gloat, didn't rub it in her face. He didn't need to. The silence, the emptiness of that day was enough. Weeks later, when I texted him to ask if he regretted it, his reply was short, almost chilling. No regrets. She gave me scars. I gave her memories. Fair trade. And I realized then, revenge isn't about undoing the past. It's about making sure the person who hurt you never forgets. So what did I take from that night? That sometimes justice doesn't come from parents, teachers, or society. Sometimes it comes from patience. From letting time do the work, until the stage is set and the moment is perfect. His sister thought she'd gotten away with it. That her prank was just a funny story, a memory at his expense. She never imagined that 9 years later, standing at the brink of her perfect life, it would all come crashing down in the exact same way. And maybe that's the lesson. You can mock someone, humiliate them, dismiss their pain, but you never really know if the person you hurt is quietly waiting, watching, planning, because revenge, when it's patient, when it's cold, it doesn't just sting. It destroys. If you enjoyed this story of justice finally being served, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more long-form revenge stories, and drop a comment below. Do you think the brother went too far? Or was this the perfect example of karma catching up? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, remember, sometimes the coldest revenge is the one that waits the longest.